It was a brisk Friday morning in downtown Los Angeles. The streets bustled with the rhythm of people rushing to work, sipping their overpriced lattes, and weaving through the traffic of pedestrians and honking cars. Among the crowd was a figure that stood out, though not for the reasons one might expect. He wore a worn-out hoodie, frayed jeans, and shoes that had seen better days. His scruffy beard and unkempt hair completed the look of a man who had fallen through society's cracks. This wasn't a man down on his luck, though. It was Elon Musk, one of the richest and most influential men on the planet. For weeks, the idea had been gnawing at him. Elon had grown increasingly frustrated with the way society treated the vulnerable. The divide between those who had and those who had not seemed to widen every day, and he couldn't shake the feeling that the system itself was designed to keep it that way. One night, in his sprawling Bel Air home, he decided to act, but not with another philanthropic donation or yet another think tank conference. This time, he wanted to witness the problem firsthand. He would go undercover, strip himself of his status, and walk into a world far removed from billion-dollar deals and global headlines. The plan was simple: dress as a homeless man and attempt to open a bank account with just a few crumpled bills in hand. No credit history, no fancy credentials, just the sheer will to be treated as an equal. The disguise had been carefully curated. The hoodie and jeans had come from a thrift store in a quiet neighborhood. The scuffed sneakers were borrowed from his assistant, who found the whole plan equally brilliant and insane. Elon even rubbed dirt on his face for added realism. His team begged him to reconsider, but he was resolute. As he approached the sleek glass doors of the prominent bank on Spring Street, Elon took a deep breath. His heart raced, not from fear, but from the uncertainty of what was to come. Would they see him as a human being or just another nuisance to shoo away? He pushed the door open, stepping into a world that smelled of polished marble and expensive cologne. Heads turned as he entered. The contrast between the bank's opulence and his disheveled appearance was stark. A few patrons whispered among themselves, glancing at him with a mixture of curiosity and disdain. Elon adjusted his hoodie and walked toward the receptionist, clutching the small wad of bills in his hand. "Excuse me," he said softly, his voice low but steady. "I'd like to open an account." The receptionist, a sharply dressed woman with a practiced smile, looked up. Her smile faltered for just a moment before she regained her composure. "Do you have an appointment?" she asked, her tone polite but tinged with doubt. "No, but I don't think I need one to open a basic account, right?" Elon replied, keeping his eyes steady on hers. She hesitated, her eyes flickering to the bag slung over his shoulder and the frayed hem of his jeans. "Let me check with someone. Please wait over there." She gestured toward a small bench near the entrance, conveniently out of the way of the bank's more esteemed clientele. Elon nodded and took a seat, feeling the stares of the room boring into him. He had expected this, maybe even prepared himself for it. But now, sitting there under the weight of judgmental gazes, he felt something he hadn't in years: vulnerability. The stage was set. What would happen next would challenge everything, both for him and for those around him. The minutes dragged on, each second stretching into an eternity as Elon sat on the edge of the hard bench. He kept his eyes fixed on the tiled floor, trying to ignore the quiet murmurs around him. A young woman standing in line whispered to her companion, "Why is he even here? Doesn't he know they'll just send him away?" Her companion nodded, casting a sideways glance at him. Elon's grip tightened around the strap of his bag. Finally, the receptionist returned, flanked by a man in a tailored navy blue suit. He had the polished air of someone who spent his weekends on golf courses and his weekdays making decisions that affected lives he would never truly understand. He approached Elon with an expression that was far from welcoming. "Sir," the man said curtly, his tone clipped, "I'm the assistant manager here. I understand you're looking to open an account?" Elon nodded. "That's right." The assistant manager gave him a long, appraising look, his eyes scanning the tattered hoodie, the worn jeans, and the bag slung over Elon's shoulder. "Do you have any form of identification?" "Yes," Elon replied, fishing a battered driver's license out of his pocket. It was a real ID, though not one that revealed his true identity. The assistant manager barely glanced at it before handing it back, his disinterest palpable. "And do you have proof of address?" he asked, folding his arms. "I don't have a permanent address right now," Elon admitted. But I have cash to deposit. The assistant manager's eyebrows rose. I see. Unfortunately, without a permanent address, we can't proceed with opening an account. It's policy. His voice was devoid of empathy, as if reciting a line from a script. But surely there's a way, Elon began, but the assistant manager held up a hand. I'm sorry, sir, there's nothing I can do. The words were firm, final, and laced with indifference. He turned on his heel, as if the conversation was already over. Elon stared after him, his jaw tightening. He had expected resistance, but the cold dismissal still stung. As the assistant manager walked away, a security guard stationed near the entrance began to hover closer, his posture tense and watchful. Excuse me, Elon said, his voice louder now. The assistant manager stopped and turned, his expression a mix of impatience and mild annoyance. I'd like to speak with the branch manager, Elon continued. His tone was calm, but there was an undercurrent of steel that hadn't been there before. The assistant manager hesitated, his eyes narrowing. The branch manager is very busy. I don't think— I insist, Elon interrupted, standing up. His height and presence, even in disguise, made the assistant manager falter slightly. A few customers nearby stopped their quiet conversations to watch the unfolding scene. After a tense pause, the assistant manager nodded. Fine. Wait here. I'll see if she's available. As the assistant manager disappeared into an office at the back of the bank, the security guard edged closer, his hand resting lightly on the baton at his side. Elon ignored him, his mind racing. The hostility in the air was palpable, but he wasn't about to back down. He hadn't come this far to be brushed aside like an inconvenience. The murmurs among the customers grew louder. One older man in a business suit muttered to no one in particular, "People like him don't belong in a place like this. He's wasting everyone's time." Elon's hands clenched into fists, but he forced himself to stay calm. He couldn't break character, not yet. Not when the real test was just beginning. Moments later, a woman in her mid-50s emerged from the office. She was dressed impeccably in a tailored blazer and pencil skirt, her heels clicking against the marble floor as she approached. Her expression was professional, though there was a flicker of something else in her eyes when she looked at Elon, curiosity perhaps, or suspicion. "I'm Lisa Chen, the branch manager," she said, extending a hand. Elon shook it, noting the slight hesitation in her grip. "I understand you'd like to open an account?" "Yes," Elon replied. "But I was told I can't because I don't have a permanent address." "That's correct," Lisa said, her tone measured. "It's a regulatory requirement. Without proof of address, we're unable to process account openings." "I see," Elon said, his voice steady. "But I'd still like to discuss it with you, in private." Lisa blinked, taken aback by the request. She glanced at the assistant manager, who stood nearby with his arms crossed, then back at Elon. After a moment's hesitation, she nodded. "All right," she said. "Follow me." As Elon trailed behind her, the whispers in the room grew louder, the eyes of every customer following his every step. The tension was thick, almost suffocating. But Elon didn't look back. He was about to challenge more than just bank policy. The office was a stark contrast to the bustling lobby. It was quiet, almost too quiet, with sleek furniture and minimalist decor that exuded professionalism. Lisa Chen gestured for Elon to take a seat across from her polished mahogany desk. She sat down with a practiced poise, folding her hands neatly on the table. The assistant manager lingered in the doorway, his presence a subtle reminder that Elon was still under scrutiny. "So, Mr.—" Lisa paused, glancing at the ID on her desk. "L," Elon replied simply. "Mr. L, I'm happy to discuss your concerns, but as I mentioned, we have regulations in place. Without a permanent address, we cannot proceed with opening an account," Lisa explained, her tone polite but firm. Elon leaned forward slightly, meeting her gaze. "I understand regulations, Ms. Chen, but I also understand that banks like yours claim to serve the community. Wouldn't helping someone in my situation be part of that mission?" Lisa hesitated. "It's not that simple. We're bound by federal guidelines." "Guidelines," Elon interrupted, his voice calm but pointed. "Or excuses to avoid dealing with people society deems inconvenient?" The assistant manager bristled. "Sir, you're out of line." Lisa held up a hand, silencing him. She studied Elon carefully, her professional mask slipping just enough to reveal a flicker of doubt. I'm sure you understand, we can't make exceptions for everyone. If we did, the system would collapse. Elon's lips curved into a faint smile. The system is already collapsing, for people like me. There was a pause, heavy with unspoken tension. Lisa leaned back in her chair, her sharp eyes narrowing as she assessed the man in front of her. There was something about him, something she couldn't quite place. He didn't have the desperation of someone truly homeless, yet his words carried a conviction that was hard to ignore. Let me ask you something, Elon continued, his tone softening. Do you believe the system is fair, truly fair? Lisa glanced at the assistant manager, who shifted uncomfortably in the doorway, before turning back to Elon. Fairness is subjective, she said cautiously. What seems unfair to one person might seem necessary to another. And that's the problem, Elon said, his voice rising just enough to fill the room. Fairness shouldn't be subjective. It should be universal. But it's not. Especially not in places like this. Lisa frowned, her fingers drumming lightly on the desk. You seem very passionate about this, she said, but I'm not sure what you expect me to do. I can't change federal law. I'm not asking you to, Elon replied. I'm asking you to see me as a human being, not as a problem to be dealt with or a policy to be enforced. The words hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. For the first time, Lisa looked genuinely unsettled, not by Elon's appearance, but by the truth of his words. The assistant manager shifted again, his discomfort palpable. After a long moment, Lisa sighed and leaned forward, her elbows resting on the desk. All right, Mr. L. You've made your point, but I still don't see how we can move forward. Elon's smile widened, a glimmer of something enigmatic flashing in his eyes. I think you'll understand soon enough, he said, his tone carrying a hint of challenge. But first, I need you to indulge me in one more conversation. This one won't be about bank accounts or regulations. Lisa raised an eyebrow, intrigued despite herself. What kind of conversation? The kind that changes everything, Elon said. His voice was calm, almost conversational, but there was an undeniable weight to his words. Do you have 10 minutes? Lisa hesitated, glancing at the assistant manager again. He looked ready to protest, but she waved him off. Fine, she said, settling back in her chair. You have 10 minutes. Elon nodded, his expression unreadable. Good. Let's start with why I'm really here. Elon leaned back in his chair, his demeanor calm but commanding. Lisa Chen folded her hands again, watching him closely, her professional composure tinged with curiosity. I'm not here to waste your time, Elon began, his voice steady. And I'm certainly not here because I don't have other options. Let's make that clear. Lisa tilted her head, her brows furrowing slightly. The assistant manager, still lingering in the doorway, shifted uneasily. I came here, Elon continued, because I wanted to see firsthand how someone like me, someone without a home, without resources, would be treated in a place like this. Lisa's frown deepened. Someone like you? She repeated, skepticism lacing her words. Yes, Elon said. He reached into his bag, pulling out a folded piece of paper. It was a handwritten note, worn at the edges. He slid it across the desk toward her. Read this. Lisa hesitated, then unfolded the paper. Her eyes scanned the neat handwriting, her expression growing more puzzled with each line. It was a message, outlining the harsh realities faced by the homeless, the barriers they encountered daily, and a call to action for change. At the bottom, in bold letters, was a signature she immediately recognized. Elon Musk, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Her gaze shot up to meet his. This can't be. It is, Elon said, his tone matter-of-fact. He reached up and removed the baseball cap he'd been wearing, running a hand through his disheveled hair. The subtle shift in posture, the confidence in his eyes, it all fell into place. The room fell silent, the weight of the revelation sinking in. The assistant manager froze in the doorway, his mouth slightly open, as if struggling to process what he'd just witnessed. You're Elon Musk? Lisa finally asked, her voice a mix of disbelief and astonishment. I am, he confirmed. And everything that just happened here is exactly why I did this. The way your staff treated me, The way your policies were used as a shield to avoid addressing a real human need. This isn't just about one bank. It's about a system that's failing millions of people every day. Lisa's hands trembled slightly as she set the paper down. Why go through all this? Why not just use your platform to make a statement? Because words aren't enough, Elon replied. People need to see the reality of what's happening. They need to feel it, to understand it in a way that statistics and speeches can't convey. And sometimes, the only way to do that is to step into someone else's shoes. Even if just for a day. Lisa glanced at the assistant manager, whose face had turned pale. I didn't realize, the man stammered. That's the point, Elon interrupted, his voice firm. You didn't realize because you didn't want to. It was easier to dismiss me, to assume I was someone unworthy of your time. And that mindset? It's not just yours. It's everywhere. Lisa looked down at her hands, a flicker of shame crossing her face. I'm sorry, she said quietly, for how we treated you. Elon nodded. I'm not here for apologies. I'm here for change. He reached into his bag again, pulling out a small recording device. I've documented everything that happened today. The way I was treated, the policies that were thrown at me, the way people in the lobby whispered and judged, and I'm going to use it to start a conversation, a real one, not about blame, but about solutions. Lisa's eyes widened. You're going public with this? Yes, Elon said simply, and I want this bank to be part of the solution, not the problem, but that choice is up to you. The tension in the room was palpable as Lisa stared at him, weighing her options. She knew this could be a PR disaster or an opportunity to make a meaningful impact. What do you need from us? She asked finally. Elon smiled faintly. A commitment to change, not just here but across the industry, and a willingness to support initiatives that help the homeless and financially excluded. Lisa took a deep breath, then nodded. You'll have it. The tension in the room began to lift, replaced by a cautious sense of possibility. Elon leaned forward, his expression serious but not unkind. This isn't just about optics, he said. It's about accountability. What happens next will define how your institution, and others like it, are remembered. Lisa nodded, her professionalism intact despite the weight of the moment. We'll do our part. You have my word. Elon smiled faintly. Good. But this is only the beginning. With that, he stood and slipped the recording device back into his bag. I'll be in touch, he said, extending a hand. Lisa hesitated only for a moment before shaking it. There was a firmness in her grip now, a newfound resolve. As Elon turned to leave, the assistant manager stepped aside, his face still pale but his posture less rigid. The murmurs in the lobby grew louder as Elon walked back through the pristine halls, his hoodie and worn sneakers still in stark contrast to the marble floors and polished surfaces. This time, though, there was no hesitation in his stride. He pushed open the glass doors and stepped back onto the bustling street, the city alive around him. His disguise had served its purpose, and the experiment had revealed exactly what he had hoped and feared: the barriers, the judgments, the systemic failures. It was all laid bare. Later that evening, Elon sat in front of a camera in a modest studio, still wearing the hoodie and jeans from his undercover mission. The footage from the bank, combined with his own narration, became the foundation of a bold campaign. The video highlighted the struggles of those experiencing homelessness, juxtaposing their realities with the dismissive attitudes he had encountered. It wasn't about shaming the bank, it was about exposing a larger issue. The video went live the next day, and the response was immediate. Social media erupted with discussions, debates, and most importantly, calls to action. News outlets picked up the story, and the footage from the bank became a symbol of a broken system in desperate need of repair. Within weeks, several major banks announced new initiatives aimed at making their services more accessible to the homeless and financially underserved. The bank where Elon had conducted his experiment led the charge, partnering with local shelters and nonprofits to provide resources and support. But the impact didn't stop there. Elon's campaign sparked a nationwide conversation about inequality, judgment, and the barriers faced by society's most vulnerable. People from all walks of life shared their stories, their struggles, and their hopes for a better future. And amid it all, Elon remained steadfast. using his platform not just to amplify the voices of others, but to drive real, tangible change. The experiment had started as a way to understand the problem, but it ended as a catalyst for solutions. In the end, the message was clear. No one should be dismissed based on appearances. Everyone deserves dignity, respect, and a chance to build a better life. And sometimes, it takes stepping outside the familiar to truly see the world and the people in it for what they are. As Elon watched the growing impact of his actions, he couldn't help but feel a flicker of hope. This wasn't the end of the journey, but it was a step in the right direction.